Welcome, everyone. I want to introduce Beth Kaye. She's from the Oregon Patient Safety Commission, and she's going to be talking to us about what to do after an adverse event as part of our learning session for teamwork and communication. Welcome, Beth Kaye.
Thank you so much. My name is Beth Kaye, and I am the Director of Early Discussion and Resolution at the Oregon Patient Safety Commission. I'd like to thank Health Insight for inviting me to speak today to the Nursing Home Collaborative. Today, I'm going to be talking about one aspect of a response to an adverse event. And an adverse event is a term I'll be using a lot. It's a term that has many definitions. The definition I'm going to use is that an adverse event is any injury to a resident caused by medical care rather than by the underlying disease or condition of the resident. It does not imply error or negligence or poor quality, and many of them are preventable, but not all of them are preventable. Some examples are an adverse drug event, a fall, a pressure ulcer, or a mistaken resident identity. And you'll find a glossary and list of resources in your materials. So, next slide. I want to just spend a minute on the cost of failing to communicate after a serious adverse event. The failure to communicate can have some serious consequences. Most of the research in this area has been conducted in hospital settings, but is also applicable to nursing homes. And the research finds that residents and families experience silence after an injury as a further injury. They feel abandoned and they're left in confusion. Another way to say this is that silence compounds the injury. The residents are not, and the families are not the only folks who will suffer from silence. Think about the last time you did something that hurt someone else. Maybe you stepped on someone's foot while making your way to your seat in a dark movie theater. The first instinct we have is to communicate, to say, I'm sorry. If you're in a work environment where acknowledging adverse events is discouraged, you will experience emotional distress because that instinct to communicate will be quashed. Not acknowledging an adverse event has also been shown to decrease both resident and care provider satisfaction because the secret, if you will, gets in the way of the care relationship. Failing to communicate may also erode trust in the organization. A family member may think, if they're not being upfront and honest about this, what else aren't they telling me? And this can give the organization a reputation for being secretive or unreliable. When an organization does not communicate or doesn't communicate well with a patient or family after an adverse event, it can lead to litigation. Families will see a lawsuit as the only way of getting answers to their questions. Finally, communications after an adverse event can bring to light safety issues that can be corrected. Failing to communicate sacrifices an opportunity to improve the quality of care. So what do residents and families want? It's pretty simple. They want an open and direct conversation that responds to the 5 questions that they're likely to have about the event. Patients and residents, families always have these questions. What happened? Why did it happen? Was it preventable? What impact will it have on my health? And what's being done to improve care for future residents? So, what should you do if you want to communicate? Well, the best practice in the area is contained in this chart. This is a drawing or schematic of a communication and resolution program for responding to unexpected harm, and it's part of the Candor Toolkit. There are citations in your reference materials. A communication and resolution program is a principled, comprehensive, and compassionate response to residents, families, and care providers in the wake of resident harm. It also sets up a consistent process to identify, learn from, and correct any safety gaps responsible for the care breakdown. So I want to take you through the steps here and explain how they relate to each other. So the first step is obviously knowing that there's an event. You have to be able to identify the event. And in order to do that, you need a reporting system, and you need a practice of vigorous and immediate reporting of unsafe conditions, near misses, and adverse events that have caused patient harm. You won't have that unless you have a just culture in your organization that supports reporting and ensures that there is no retaliation against a care provider who reports an event. The second step, the system activation, is really what sets the system in motion when an adverse event is identified. Each organization can identify a threshold for when a patient harm will trigger this process. One thing that you want to do when you activate your system is you want to put a hold on bills and solicitations until you've figured out what happened. So when the system is activated, boxes 3 and 4 both are in play, and they continue to be in play in parallel with each other until you reach the resolution stage. Box 3 is addressing the emotional needs of the people involved. This includes providing proactive peer support to address the emotional needs of care providers who may have been traumatized by what happened. But it also covers communication with the resident and family. For both, you want to use your organization's strongest communicators. And you also want to remember that communications is a process. It's not a one-time event. At the initial meeting, for example, with the family, you will want to disclose that something happened. You'll want to provide information to the extent that you know. You want to be empathetic. You want to see the family's immediate needs, and you want to make sure the family knows who on your team is going to be staying in contact with them, who the family can call to find out if there are any updates. So that would be the initial communication. And then follow-up communications will provide information from your investigation and analysis. The investigation and analysis is your process to determine what happened. You want to make sure to ask the patient and the family for any information they can contribute to your investigation. And what you learn through your investigation and analysis process will inform what you ultimately say to the family. The final element is resolution. In a resolution, you first discuss with the family what you learned in the investigation. You offer an apology. It may be, I'm sorry this happened, or if you have determined that there was some fault, then you'll make a different kind of apology. I'm sorry that we did not do this the way we should have. If it turns out after your investigation that you conclude that your care did not meet the standard, then consider offering proactively some kind of compensation. And then also as part of resolution, you want to use what you learn to improve care for future residents. You want to be a learning organization. So whatever action plan you've made, you want to implement it, you want to monitor it to make sure that it's effective, and you want to let the patient and the family know the actions that you've taken. This page is a summary, or this slide is a summary of some of the benefits of a communication and resolution program response. It compares what might have happened traditionally to what happens if you use a CRP. We're not going to spend time on it, but it's a useful summary. I do want to go over with you some of the action steps that you can take now. I'd say the most important thing you can do is to explore the Communication and Optimal Resolution Toolkit. That's where that chart came from. It's called the Candor Toolkit. It's on the AHRQ website, and there's a citation in your packet. You also want to identify your strongest communicators. And if you have not already done so, you want to complete the AHRQ Patient Safety Culture Survey. That will tell you a lot about your organization. Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Beth.